Before this video starts, I'm going to apologize in advance for mispronouncing several of these Turkish words and names. I'm very obviously American, and I strive to be better in the future. With that being said, please enjoy the video. The Lake Van Monster. The Lake Van Monster is a cryptoid seen in Lake Van, south of Mount Ararat in eastern Turkey. Some of the best-known documented sightings of the creature appeared between 1995 and 1997, but the first sighting is documented in 1889 at Lake Van, the largest lake in Turkey. Its Turkish name is hard for my American tongue to pronounce, so I put it in Google Translate for you.
Van Gölü canavarı.
The Lake Van monster has allegedly been sighted by over 1,000 eyewitnesses. The monster is said to resemble ancient marine reptiles, such as a plesiosaur, which also shares characteristics with the famous Loch Ness monster. Sightings have been reported internationally since November 2nd, 1995 in a Daily Telegraph article, but some research suggests that the creature had been seen prior to that time. A supposed short video of the Lake Van monster was filmed in 1997 by 26-year-old Van University teaching assistant Unal Kozak. This controversial video has baffled researchers as to the identification of the creature in the film. Some claim to have seen a beak, others seem positive it is nothing more than a swimming elephant, even though there are no elephants living near the lake, whereas skeptics refuse to see anything other than a pile of garbage bags being dragged through the deep waters of the lake. In late 1997, the film was aired on CNN, and since then, it has become the center of a firestorm of cryptozoological controversy. The Turkish scientific community is at a loss to explain the identity and origin of the animal, and Orhan Eraman, biology professor at Ataturk University in Erzurum, claims that there is nothing that even remotely resembles the Lake Van monster capable of living in the lake, stating it is simply not possible for a creature of the size claimed by witnesses to live in a closed lake-like van. Also, Lake Van is a soda lake, so nothing can live there. Possible explanations for the sightings are ancient creatures such as a plesiosaur or mosasaur, or even a squid as some suggest, even though none of these have ever been confirmed. Lake Van is again the largest lake in Turkey with a surface area of 3,775 square kilometers. It's a saline soda lake receiving water from numerous small streams that descend from the surrounding mountains. Lake Van is one of the world's largest endorheic lakes. Lake Van is 119 kilometers across at its widest point, averaging a depth of 171 meters with a maximum recorded depth of 451 meters. The lake water is strongly alkaline and rich in sodium carbonate and other salts. The only known fish to live in the brackish water of Lake Van is the Chalcoburnus chirichi, the pearl mullet, a cyprinid fish related to chub and dace. 103 species of phytoplankton and 36 species of zooplankton have been recorded in the lake. Also, an endemic Enchytraeus variety worm was discovered in 2012. In 2010, a 121-year-old newspaper article was found about a big creature sighting in Lake Van. The article was published in a newspaper named Saadet News in the Ottoman period, year 1889. The article tells about a sighting report of 3 men traveling from Tatvant to Alet. One of the travelers said that they were camping near the lake and they wanted to wash their hands with the water of the lake. While they were washing, a big creature appeared in the water quickly and attacked them. It captured one of the three by his leg and tried to pull him into the lake. The other two tried to save their friend, but their strength wasn't enough to rescue him because the creature was too strong. So they picked up some burning wood from their campfire and attacked the creature. When the fire touched the creature, it screamed in extreme pain and fled to the depths of the lake and took the man with it. The man who was captured was never to be found. In 1890, the newspaper again mentioned the Lake Van monster. According to this report, the monster was a cream-colored, winged, dragon-like creature. These are among the oldest sighting reports of the Lake Van monster that are documented, but there are some thoughts about earlier references. On Octomar Island, which is the biggest island in Lake Van, there is an Armenian church named Octomar Church made in 915 CE. The church's outer walls are covered with stone carving pictures. In one picture, a sea monster-like creature can clearly be seen underneath a ship. The majority think this picture is a reference to the Lake Van monster. If this is true, that means it has been known for more than 1,000 years. The Armenian chroniclers Matsas Koronadze and Anania Shirakatsi wrote about Visops, water dragons in Armenian mythology living in Lake Van. According to legend, the god of fire and thunder, Vahan the Vishapakag, reaper of Vishops, would plunge into Lake Van and drag out any Vishop that had grown large enough to devour the world. Scholar James Russell considers that this legend is an Armenian adaptation of Urartian myths concerning the combat of the god Tesheba with the water monster Ulakami. Russell writes that into the modern period, the Armenians of the Van Basin would refer to the sudden storms that arise on the lake as dragon wind. That actually sounds epic. I would love to see that. The Susurluk accident. So, the Susurluk accident was a 1996 political scandal in Turkey that exposed a close relationship between the Turkish government, the ultra-nationalistic paramilitary Grey Wolves organization, and the Turkish mafia. It took place during the peak of the Kurdish-Turkish conflict in the mid-1990s. The scandal surfaced with a car-truck collision on November 3, 1996, near the small town of Susurluk in the province of Balıkesir. The victims included were Hüseyin Kocada, the deputy chief of the Istanbul Police Department, Sedat Bucak, a member of parliament representing Şanlıurfa province, and Abdullah Çatla, the leader of the Grey Wolves and a contract killer for the National Intelligence Organization of Turkey, MIT, who was on Interpol's red list at the time of his death. The peculiar connections of those involved in the crash with Interior Minister Mehmet Agir brought to light the existence of a deep state in Turkey and an internal power struggle within the Turkish political structure. The infighting had its roots in the state's escalating low-intensity conflict with the Kurdistan Workers' Party that had been taking place since 1984. Towards the end of 1992, a furious debate in the National Security Council about how to proceed was taking place. The same year, the NSC ordered a coordinated black operations campaign against the PKK using special forces. The Turkish branch of Operation Gladio contributed much of these special forces. Deputy Police Prime Minister Tansu Çiller tasked the police force, under the leadership of then Chief of Police Mehmet Agir, with crippling the PKK and assassinating its leader, Abdullah Öcalan. The police unit responsible for this job was the Special Operations Department. Abdullah Chatla also took part. This caused consternation in the MIT, which had formally counted on Chatla to undertake reprisals against the militant Armenian organization ASALA. Especially concerned was Mehmet Amer of the MIT's Operation Counterterrorism Department, who had irreconcilable differences with Agir. Those involved then split into two camps, those loyal to Mehmet Agir and those loyal to Mehmet Amer. The scandal has hence been pithily described as the Battle of the Two Mehmets. Intelligence expert Mahir Koenig described the police camp as pro-European and the MIT camp as pro-American. According to Koenig, Agir's gang aimed to create a state within a state complete with a shadow army, the village guard system, and intelligence organization inside the police force. The MIT ultimately purged the gang in a crash that was passed off as an accident. The subsequent media scrutiny surrounding the crash led to several investigations and the resignation of both Chiller and Agar, though no government official associated with the scandal faced any immediate criminal trial. FETO, or the Fethullahist Terrorist Organization, is a transnational Islamic network designated as a terrorist organization by Turkey. Founded by Turkish clerk Fethullah Gulen, the movement is officially accused by the Turkish government of orchestrating a violent failed military coup on July 15, 2016. In the evening of July 15, 2016, a faction within the Turkish armed forces of 8,500 soldiers organized as the Peace at Home Council. They attempted a coup against state institutions, including the government of President Recep Erdogan. They attempted to seize control of several places in Ankara, Istanbul, Marmaris, and elsewhere, such as the Asian side entrance of the Bosporus Bridge, but failed to do so after forces and civilians loyal to the state defeated them. The council cited an erosion of secularism, elimination of democratic rule, disregard for human rights, and Turkey's loss of credibility in the international arena as reasons for the coup. The same night, Erdogan stated that they had evidence the coup leaders were linked to the Gulen movement, which had over 2,000 schools, hundreds of charities, and hospitals globally by 2015. Erdogan designated the movement as a terrorist organization in May 2016, citing the 2013 corruption scandal, which he described as a judicial coup attempt allegedly carried out by police officers linked to the movement as justification. The Gulen movement was led by Fethullah Gulen, a Turkish businessman and a well-known Islamic scholar who lived in exile in Pennsylvania. The Turkish government alleged that Gulen was behind the coup and that the United States was harboring him. In response, Gulen has called for an international commission to investigate the failed coup and said he would accept the findings if such a body found evidence of his guilt. In contrast, the Erdogan government did not even agree to the proposal for a national parliamentary committee to investigate the events of July 15th. The USA controls Turkey. This theory is a broad collection of geopolitical, historical, and conspiratorial narratives suggesting that the United States covertly directs or manipulates Turkey's domestic politics, economy, and foreign policy. These theories generally fall into two main categories: domestic populist rhetoric used by Turkish politicians and theories based on historical Cold War-era alliances. First is the mastermind and coup theories. These theories, highly prevalent in Turkish pro-government media and political discourse, suggest that the U.S. operates a shadow government or directs a mastermind from abroad to undermine Turkey's sovereignty. Following the July 15, 2016 attempted coup against President Erdogan, government officials and state-aligned media openly speculated that the U.S. financed or directed the plot. This theory centers on the fact that Gulen, the man Turkey blames for the uprising, has lived in a compound in Pennsylvania since 1999. U.S. military backing of Kurdish-led Syrian groups like the YPG and SDF in the fight against ISIS has fueled theories that Washington is deliberately trying to fracture Turkey. Turkish leaders frequently argue that America arms these groups to destabilize Turkey from the inside. Historical context, Cold War alliances, and the deep state. The term deep state itself originated in Turkey to describe a covert anti-democratic network within the state's military, judiciary, and intelligence agencies. During the Cold War, the US and NATO helped fund anti-communist paramilitary networks in several European countries, such as Operation Gladio in Italy to prevent Soviet expansion. In Turkey, this network was known as the counter-guerrilla. This has led to enduring theories that the US helped establish and continues to secretly influence the deep state apparatus in Turkey. Modern geopolitical experts often describe the relationship as an uneasy alliance marred by power struggles. Turkey possesses NATO's second largest standing army and controls the Turkish Straits, making it vital to US and European security. Conversely, Turkey relies heavily on the West for trade, weapons procurement, and counterbalancing Russia. In reality, the US and Turkey frequently act with outright hostility towards each other's regional objectives. This friction is best illustrated by Turkey's 2019 purchase of the Russian S-400 system, an act of defiance that led to US sanctions and Turkey's expulsion from the F-35 fighter jet program. While anti-American sentiment is frequently used in Turkey for political leverage and domestic consumption, international relations experts analyze the dynamic as a complex, often strained partnership between a superpower and a fiercely independent regional power. Who poisoned Özal? No single person was ever definitively proven or convicted of poisoning the 8th Turkish president, Turgut Özal, who died in 1993. While his exhumed body in 2012 showed traces of toxic substances, subsequent investigations did not establish a conclusive cause of death, leading a court to acquit the only charged suspect. Özal died suddenly in April 1993, with officials at the time citing heart failure, though no autopsy was conducted immediately to prove that. Following decades of suspicion, his body was exhumed in 2012. Forensic tests revealed the presence of the banned pesticide DDT and various toxic heavy metals. However, forensic experts could not definitively conclude that these substances were the cause of death. In 2013, prosecutors charged retired General Levent Erzaz with attempted murder, suspecting a deep state political conspiracy. However, an Ankara court acquitted him in 2014 due to insufficient evidence. The Ergenekon and Balias trials. So, these trials were highly controversial and politically charged. These proceedings took place in the 2010s, initiated by prosecutors aligned with the Gulen movement. They prosecuted hundreds of secular military officers, journalists, and academics for alleged coup plots against the AKP government. The convictions were widely overturned upon appeal, ultimately resulting in the acquittal of nearly all defendants by 2016. Prosecutors claimed a secularist, deep state terrorist network was organizing high-profile killings and chaos to trigger a military coup. Former military chief İlker Başbuğ was among those handed a life sentence in 2013. This case alleged a specific 2003 conspiracy by top naval and military officers to bomb mosques and trigger a conflict with Greece in order to justify seizing power from then Prime Minister Recep Erdogan. Over 300 officers were initially convicted in 2012. So, independent forensic experts and defense teams uncovered rampant digital forgery and inconsistencies, such as documents detailing orders given by officers who were out of the country at the time or referencing hardware that did not exist in 2003. Observers and human rights groups largely viewed these trials as a systemic attempt by Erdogan's government and Gulenist prosecutors to neutralize the traditional secularist military establishment. When the AKP and Gulenists split over sweeping corruption investigations in late 2013, Erdogan's administration claimed the military defendants were framed by the Gulenist-run judiciary. The Turkish Constitutional Court ordered retrials for BIOS defendants in 2014, leading to acquittals. In 2016, an appeals court quashed the Ergenekon convictions, ruling that the existence of the clandestine organization had never been proven. What happened to Yishing? Commonly known by his codename Yishing, which is Turkish for green, Mahmut Yildirim, who identified himself to the public as Ahmet Demir, was a notorious hitman and rogue intelligence operative who worked with the Turkish Gendarmeri's intelligence group and the National Intelligence Organization during the 1990s. He was implicated in numerous extrajudicial killings, kidnappings, and extortion rings tied to the deep state during the country's conflict with the PKK. So he disappeared without a trace in 1998. He remains a fugitive, is the subject of an Interpol Red Notice, and his exact whereabouts or fate remain completely unknown, leading to decades of speculation. The Deep State. So the Susurluk accident and the USA controls Turkey entries really already overlap with this Deep State entry. But the Deep State is an alleged clandestine network of influential elites embedded within the Turkish military, intelligence agencies, judiciary, and organized crime who operate behind the scenes to preserve a fiercely secular, nationalist, and state-centric status quo. Lausanne's secret clauses. There are no secret clauses in the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne. The myth that the treaty contains hidden articles is a popular and enduring conspiracy theory. There are multiple reasons for this myth. There's the 100-year expiration myth, which is a widely circulated conspiracy theory that claims the treaty was secretly set to expire, unleashing Turkey's ability to extract untapped petroleum, boron, and other natural resources. But historians and official records confirm the treaty has no expiration date and no such clauses exist. There's the oil and resource myths. Some versions of the rumor falsely claim a secret annex signed by Turkish and British diplomats prohibited Turkey from legally extracting its own subterranean resources until 2023. In reality, Turkey's right to its own resources is uninhibited by the treaty, which instead defined the final borders of the modern Turkish Republic and resolved post-World War I territorial disputes. And then there's the Lausanne versus Sèvres debate. Because the Treaty of Lausanne replaced the harsher, unratified Treaty of Sèvres, which would have partitioned much of Anatolia, it is widely celebrated as a foundational victory. However, it also required Turkey to renounce claims to former Ottoman territories like Cyprus, Egypt, and Iraq, creating domestic debates and political narratives about what was given away. Ataturk was a Freemason. Common claims that Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was connected to Freemasonry stem from a mix of historical facts, political context, symbolic overlap, and later myth-making. The belief rests on several concrete and circumstantial elements. Many prominent Turkish reformers, military officers, and politicians of the late Ottoman and early Republican eras were Freemasons. Ataturk operated in networks where Masons were numerous and influential, which fosters association by proximity, of course. Lodges in late Ottoman Istanbul and early Republican Ankara and Izmir functioned as forums for modernist, nationalist, and secular ideas. Ataturk attended salons, meetings, and social spaces frequented by Masons, strengthening the impression of a connection. Now, Freemasonry in the Ottoman Turkish context often promoted secularism, legal rational reform, nationalism, and westernization. And these goals overlapped tightly with Ataturk's program. Secularization, language, legal reform, and educational modernization. So, observers inferred a link between the ideology and the man who implemented it. Republican symbolism and some Masonic rhetoric about enlightenment and progress appeared mutually reinforcing to contemporaries and later commentators. Some Masonic lodges and Masonic-friendly historians have suggested Ataturk's sympathy for or private contacts with Freemasonry. A few secondary sources claim he visited lodges or received Masonic greetings, but these claims are rarely supported by unequivocal primary membership records. Personal correspondence, memoirs of officers and politicians, and police intelligence reports of the period occasionally mention Freemasons in Ataturk's circle without documenting formal initiation of Ataturk himself. Now, religious conservatives, monarchists, and political rivals used the label Mason as a shorthand for foreign influence, secularism, or anti-Islamic plotting. Applying the term to Ataturk served to delegitimize the Republic for ideological opponents. Freemasonry's secretive reputation encourages retrospective conspiracy theories. The Republic's rapid, sweeping secular reforms fed narratives that a secret network, the Masons, were behind Ataturk, even where evidence was thin. Operation Gladio. Counter-guerrilla is a Turkish branch of Operation Gladio, a clandestine stay-behind anti-communist initiative backed by the United States as an expression of the Truman Doctrine. The founding goal of the operation was to erect a stay-behind guerrilla force to undermine a possible Soviet occupation. The goal was soon expanded to subverting communism in Turkey. The counter-guerrilla initially operated out of the Turkish Armed Forces Tactical Mobilization Group. In 1967, the STK was renamed to the Special Warfare Department. In 1994, the OHD became the Special Forces Command. The military accepts that the OKK is tasked with subverting a possible occupation, though it denies that the unit is Gladio's counter-guerrilla, i.e. that it has engaged in black operations. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the counter-guerrilla were used to fight the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which has since its inception been regarded as a major threat by the deep state in Turkey. Now, the existence of the counter-guerrilla was revealed in 1971 by survivors of the Ziverby incident, and on the 26th of September 1973 by Prime Minister Bülent Ecevit. The subject has been broached by Parliament at least 27 times since 1990. However, no successful investigation has taken place. Deputies of the incumbent party in any given administration always voted in dissent. Red Apple. The Red Apple is not a single conspiracy theory, but rather a centuries-old Turkish mythological concept that has been adapted into modern nationalist ideologies and geopolitical conspiracy theories. Originally an ancient Central Asian myth representing a legendary, ever-distant city or a symbol of ultimate global dominance, it has evolved in the modern era. In early Turkic and Ottoman folklore, the red apple represents an idealized destination or the ultimate goal of Turkish conquest and unity. It symbolizes a sacred quest to establish peace, justice, and dominance. The name stems from various legends, including an apple made of gold atop an imperial statue in Constantinople, which came to symbolize the ultimate target of the Ottoman Empire. Today, the concept is frequently utilized by Turkish politicians and in popular media to promote ideas of expansive Turkish power and a neo-Ottoman global presence. Cult members and parliament. This theory refers to the deep historical and political influence of secretive Islamic religious sects or communities. The most prominent example was, again, the Gulen movement, followed by ongoing influence from traditional Sufi orders. Secret evacuation in Tarsus. The 2017 Tarsus evacuation was a highly secretive archaeological dig in the 82 Evler neighborhood of Tarsus. Supervised by state security and intelligence, the operation sparked internet mysteries and conspiracy theories, ranging from vast gold hoards and secret tunnels to missing workers and forbidden biblical texts. So this dig was conducted under high-level oversight between November 13, 2016 and November 3, 2017. A shanty-style house in the historic district was cordoned off with armored vehicles, and the street was blocked by special forces and the National Intelligence Organization. Rumors proliferated online that the team found King Solomon's treasure, a previously undiscovered gospel, or even a portal. Bizarre urban legends claimed a 15-person evacuation crew went missing inside the site, or that mobile phones mysteriously cut out. So, following the conclusion of the dig, authorities reported that no major historical artifacts, treasure caches, or sinister discoveries were made. While Tarsus is historically renowned for being the birthplace of St. Paul and an important ancient city, the intense security and lack of transparency gave rise to the enduring mythology surrounding the site. Satanist Tyrannist. This one refers to a controversial subculture and recurring moral panic in Turkey. It's a fusion of Tyrannism, an ultra-nationalist ideology seeking to unite all Turkic and Euro-Archaic peoples, and esoteric Satanism, often mixed with ancient Tigris or pre-Islamic shamanic elements. This fringe phenomena traces back to the late 1990s and early 2000s in Turkey's underground black metal scene. It was heavily documented by Turkish police and media during a wave of satanic moral panics. A rebellious fringe group emerged that rejected traditional Middle Eastern Abrahamic religions like Islam and Christianity. They identified deeply with original Turkic and pre-Islamic identity, creating a paradox of being both fierce Turkish nationalists and practitioners of anti-establishment satanic or shamanic rituals. While the movement's actual members are incredibly small, it remains a frequent tool for political and societal friction. Mainstream conservative media and Islamist groups in Turkey often use Satanism as a broad accusation against metal music, goth subcultures, and secularists to frame them as societal threats. In a country where Turkish nationalism usually aligns with conservative, state-sanctioned religions, blending ultra-nationalism with Satanism remains a shocking taboo. Greater Middle East Project. The Greater Middle East Project conspiracy theory centers on the belief that a U.S.-led initiative from the early 2000s aimed to balkanize the Middle East, specifically by carving an independent Kurdish state out of Turkish, Iraqi, Syrian, and Iranian territories. Many Turkish politicians and citizens view the U.S. Greater Middle East Initiative and subsequent regional conflicts as a covert operation designed to weaken Turkey, fracture its territorial integrity, and redesign the borders of the region in favor of Western and Israeli interests. The most prominent fear within this conspiracy is the establishment of an independent Kurdistan, which is widely perceived in Turkey as an existential threat backed by the West to dismember the Turkish state. The Greater Middle East term originates from a 2004 U.S. proposal preceding the G8 summit, which formally sought to promote democratic and economic reforms across the broader Middle East and North Africa. This conspiracy was heavily fueled by a controversial map published in 2006 by retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters in the Armed Forces Journal. The map depicted a hypothetical redrawn Middle East that included a massive free Kurdistan carved directly out of southeastern Turkey. This defunct U.S. initiative remains a major driver of anti-Americanism and Western distrust across the Turkish political spectrum, spanning both ultra-nationalist and various Islamist factions. Over the years, the project has been weaponized in domestic politics. For instance, political opponents have used it to criticize President Erdogan and his past diplomatic engagements with Washington, accusing his administration of enabling foreign destabilizing plots in the region. Native Americans are Turkic. The claim that Native Americans are Turkic is a pseudo-scientific theory rooted in political ideology rather than a factual historical conspiracy. While it is true that Native Americans and certain Siberian Turkic peoples share very deep prehistoric ancestors from thousands of years ago, they are genetically, linguistically, and culturally distinct groups. The idea primarily stems from Pan-Turkism, a political movement aimed at uniting all Turkic peoples. Prominent Pan-Turkist writers have historically claimed that pre-Columbian American civilizations were actually Turkic. Modern critics note that these claims have occasionally been reviewed by political lobbying groups attempting to build diplomatic or economic rapport with Native American nations by claiming a shared blood. The actual connection between these groups is a matter of ancient human migration, not modern identity. Roughly 15 to 20,000 years ago, the ancestors of Native Americans migrated from East Asia to Siberia across the Bering Strait into the Americas. The ancient Paleo-Siberian populations that stayed behind eventually mixed with other groups, later giving rise to various Eurasian populations, including modern Siberian Turkic peoples. Because this split happened tens of thousands of years ago, Native Americans and Turkic peoples are, at best, incredibly distinct genetic cousins. They are no closer to each other than modern Europeans are to modern South Asians. There is zero linguistic evidence connecting Native American language families to the Turkic language family. The only widely studied connection between a Native American language family and a Siberian language group is the Dene-Yeniseian, I know I butchered that, hypothesis. And the Yeniseian people are explicitly not Turkic. On top of that, the cultural traits, languages, and identities of Turkic peoples didn't even begin to form in Central Asia until thousands of years after Native Americans had already fully settled in the American continent. So, conflating the two groups erases the unique independent history of indigenous Americans by viewing them through the lens of a foreign nationalistic political agenda. Ataturk is the last Gokboru. So, Ataturk is frequently referred to metaphorically as the last Gokboru, which is a sky wolf or a blue wolf by his followers. This title connects him to the ancient Gökturk, probably butchering that, mythological symbol where the sky wolf represents independence, leadership, and a guiding spirit leading the Turkic people out of darkness into freedom and statehood. Sabbatai Zebi. Sabbatai Zebi was a former Jewish mystic and rabbi from Smyrna who converted to Islam. His family were Romaniote Jews from Patras. Active throughout the Ottoman Empire, Zebi claimed to be the long-awaited Jewish Messiah and founded the Sabbatian movement. The movement gained significant traction among international Jews. Central to his teachings was the belief that during the Messianic age, acts traditionally considered sinful would transform into righteous ones. This antinomian doctrine led Zebi and his followers to deliberately violate Jewish commandments, a controversial practice that later inspired movements like the Frankists. Upon arriving in Constantinople in February 1666, Zebi was imprisoned on the order of the Grand Vizier, Kapraluzade Fazel Ahmed Pasha. An entire nation is going to hate me after this video. In September of that same year, after being moved from different prisons around the capital to the imperial court seat in Adrianople, now Edirne, he was judged on accusations of fomenting sedition. Zebi was given the choice of either death or conversion to Islam by the Grand Vizier representing Sultan Mehmed IV. He chose conversion, donning an Islamic turban from then on. The heads of the Ottoman states then rewarded him with a generous pension for complying with their political and religious plans. About 300 families who followed Zebi also converted to Islam and became known as the Donme, a Turkish word for converts. Subsequently, the Ottomans banished him twice, first within Constantinople and when he was heard singing psalms with Jews there, to a small town, known today as Ulcinj in what is now Montenegro. He died in isolation. Göbekli Tepe, located in southeastern Turkey, is a 12,000-year-old archaeological site featuring massive T-shaped megalithic pillars. Because it predates established agriculture and complex societies, its sophisticated construction has fueled pseudo-archaeological conspiracy theories, claiming it was built by an advanced, lost, pre-Ice Age civilization or extraterrestrials. Pushed by commentators like Graham Hancock, this theory claims Göbekli Tepe was engineered by a highly advanced ancient global civilization. Theorists argue hunter-gatherers could not have organized the labor or possessed the engineering skill required, suggesting a technology transfer from survivors of an ancient cataclysm. Popularized on podcasts and social media, a common claim accuses mainstream archaeologists of hiding evidence. Theorists argue that researchers are dragging their feet or ignoring anomalies, such as allegedly impossible precision, to protect established historical timelines. Without empirical evidence, some spectate the site's celestial alignments and mysterious purpose are evidence of alien intervention. The mainstream archaeological consensus, archaeologists and historians overwhelmingly reject these theories, categorizing them as pseudo-archaeology. The scientific community presents the following counter-arguments. Anthropologists emphasize that Göbekli Tepe is a testament to the immense collaborative and organizational power of hunter-gatherer societies. The construction involved local limestone and simple, ingenious methods, representing a natural progression rather than sudden advanced technology. Mainstream researchers like the late Klaus Schmidt, who led the excavations, argue that the monumental labor required for Göbekli Tepe brought people together, pushing the development of agriculture as a means to feed the massive congregations. Proponents of lost civilizations often view Göbekli Tepe as an isolated anomaly. In reality, earlier examples of monumental agriculture and societal organization, such as the Tower of Jericho, have been well documented by archaeologists for decades, demonstrating a broader tradition of early monumental building. Tunnels under Bosphorus. Legends of secret ancient tunnels passing beneath the Bosphorus Strait have circulated in Istanbul's folklore for centuries. While modern engineering eventually made transcontinental subterranean travel a reality with the Marmara and Eurasia tunnels, the myths surrounding a hidden ancient network connecting Europe and Asia remain a staple of urban lore. The intercontinental Delits myth's local lore often describes hidden deep underground passages, traditionally called Delits in Turkish, supposedly carved out during the Byzantine or early Ottoman eras. The most famous legend states that secret tunnels originate deep beneath the Basilica Cistern or the Hagia Sophia. Folklore claims these paths traveled directly underneath the Bosphorus seabed to reach the Asian side of the city. Another popular myth suggests that the military fortresses facing each other across the strait, Rumeli Fortress on the European side and Anadolu Fortress on the Asian side, were connected by a secret underwater passage. This tunnel was allegedly used by rulers and soldiers to secretly transport troops or escape sieges unnoticed. Some extreme versions of the folklore suggest the tunnel stretched even further south, connecting the historical peninsula directly to the Princess Islands in the Sea of Marmara. While scientists and historians have thoroughly debunked the idea of ancient civilizations having the technology to build an underwater tunnel beneath the Bosphorus, the folklore persists for a few reasons. Istanbul genuinely sits on top of a vast, sprawling underworld of thousands of Roman and Byzantine water cisterns, aqueducts, and structural cellars. Exploration of these cellars by locals over the centuries likely fueled the imagination that they went much deeper and further than they actually did. Wolf sightings before wars. So, wolf sightings before wars is a popular cultural, urban legend and mythological motif rather than a real meteorological or scientific phenomenon. The idea primarily stems from Turkic folklore, where the sky wolf is said to appear to the Turkish people in troubling times to guide them to victory. Sven Lagerbrink was right. So allegedly this guy thought that Nordic people were somehow descendants of Turks, and this is an alleged quote from him. Our ancestors are Turks who are comrades of Odin. We have got enough evidence on this subject. There are people who want to fool you into thinking they are Ghetto or Trajan. I don't care whether it will be discrediting for me or not. Odin and his comrades were Turks. We Germanic people are in origin Turks. We have not to be ashamed of this fact. The Turks are a very honorable and pride people. Yeah, that one is wild. I don't know a lot about Turkic or Germanic history, but that just doesn't sound right. Black Magic Triangle in Eastern Marmara. In Turkish urban legend, the Black Magic Triangle refers to an infamous occult-laden zone in the eastern Marmara region spanning the cities of Zakaria, Düzce, and Izmit. Often described as a sort of regional folklore similar to Southern Gothic, the area is considered by locals and occult enthusiasts to be an epicenter for strange cults and supernatural or demonic practices. The area is colloquially called the Devil's Triangle due to its dark and off-putting vibe. Rumors surrounding the region's dark history occasionally point toward the existence of renegade cults and ancient or esoteric groups. This region, while beautiful and heavily industrialized, remains culturally fascinating for the dark urban legends and folklore stories that its rural and historical landscapes have generated. Yalçın Küçük's plan. So this guy was a prominent Turkish leftist intellectual and author known for promoting complex conspiracy theories regarding the Dönme and for his controversial involvement in the alleged Ergenekon coup plot. He passed away in April 2026. Küçük was well known for his heterodox historical and socio-political writings. He frequently claimed that historically prominent figures, societal elites, and secularists in Turkey were secret Dönme, descendants of 17th century Jewish converts to Islam. He asserted that this network operated as a cabal, working to undermine the Turkish Republic and manipulate its politics in favor of foreign or Zionist interests. While he presented these views as radical analyses of Turkish capitalism and the bourgeoisie, his work was heavily criticized by academics for relying on anti-Semitic tropes. Küçük's conspiratorial writings intersected with real-life political conspiracies. He was accused by Turkish authorities of being a top leader of the Ergenekon organization, a clandestine hardline secularist network allegedly planning to overthrow the government. Küçük was arrested in March 2011 during raids targeting news outlets like the ODTV website. He was accused of inciting hatred, disclosing classified military information, and directing the purported terrorist organization. The Ergenekon prosecutors were highly controversial, with defense teams and scholars challenging the authenticity of the digital evidence. Küçük was imprisoned for several years before his release in 2014, and the mass trials were widely denounced by press freedom organizations like the Committee to Protect Journalists as an attempt to silence political dissidents. Sultan Mehmet wanted to convert to Christianity. Historical evidence indicates that Sultan Mehmet II did not actually want to convert to Christianity. He remained a devout Sunni Muslim. This idea primarily stems from a famous 1461 letter by Pope Pius II that urged the Sultan to convert, but the letter was famously never sent. Pope Pius II drafted a massive letter to Sultan Mehmet II, promising him papal blessing and the legitimate universal title of emperor over East and West if he converted to Christianity. Because of the reality that the Pope never actually sent this letter to the Sultan, historians widely consider it a propaganda and ideological tool intended to unite European Christian princes rather than a serious attempt at a religious conversion. Mehmet II was a proud ruler and an active patron of Islamic institutions. While he was fascinated by different cultures and the history of the Roman Empire, he did not want to convert to Christianity. He viewed himself as the rightful heir to the Roman throne, but claimed this legitimacy by physically capturing Constantinople, not by adopting the religion of the fallen empire. Rather than abandoning Islam, he transformed the identity of the former Byzantine capital. His famous religious acts after the conquest was converting the Hagia Sophia into the Grand Imperial Mosque of his new empire. Mehmet Sia Kalem. The Mehmet Sia Kalem conspiracy centers on the mysterious 15th century artist known as Master Black Pen. Scholars and art historians debate the origins of these bizarre Central Asian paintings. Discovered in the hidden Topkapi Palace, their true meaning remains a mystery. Because there are no historical documents about his life, the collection has become a focal point of historical speculation and conspiracy. Many of the AD extant paintings vividly depict grotesque demons, horned entities, and bound monsters. Because these paintings significantly predate later cute depictions of jinns in Islamic art. Fringe historians and paranormal enthusiasts claim Sia Kalim possessed psychic abilities and used his art to document direct visual encounters with interdimensional jinn. Art historians actively debate exactly who Zia Kalim was, which has sparked a long-running nationalist conspiracy over his identity. The paintings themselves exhibit a wild cross-cultural mix of Chinese, Persian, Mongol, and Turkish traditions. Some researchers argue that Zia Kalim himself was entirely a myth or a collective alias used by an underground guild of wandering dervishes, while others debate whether his roots were exclusively Uyghur, Central Asian, or Iranian. The paintings frequently show figures performing twisted movements reminiscent of shamanic rituals, carrying opium pouches, or exhibiting circular burn marks on their skin. Theory suggests these works are not just artistic stories, but coded esoteric and structural guides for a secret occult society operating on the fringe of the Islamic world. Another prominent art theory, acting almost as an anti-conspiracy, is that the bizarre demon figures were deeply rooted in political and social satire rather than the supernatural. Many of the monsters are shown begging, carrying loads, or being punished by ordinary humans, which some historians believe was a political allegory meant to mock foreign invaders, corrupt nomads, or societal outcasts of the time period. Etruscans are Turkic. The theory that the ancient Etruscans were Turkic is a fringe hypothesis not supported by mainstream linguistics, archaeology, or genetics. Scholars overwhelmingly classify the Etruscan civilization as an indigenous Paleo-European culture that spoke a pre-Indo-European language. The Etruscans evolved from the prehistoric Villanovan culture in central Italy. The Etruscan language was not part of the Turkic language family. It is part of the Tarsinian language group, which died out after being absorbed by Latin. DNA studies show that Etruscans shared genetic continuity with earlier Italian and Mediterranean populations, featuring ancestry from early European farmers, with no significant ties to Central Asian or Turkic population. Discussions are mixed across history and online forums, with opinions varying on how Etruscans relate to the broader Anatolian Turks. Some proponents, including fringe linguists like Mario Alani, argue for a connection. Proponents claim photonic and morphological similarities between Etruscan and ancient Turkic words, such as comparing the Etruscan king title Tarkhan to the Turkic Tarkan. I know I butchered those. Parallels are drawn between the mythological wolf origins of Turkic peoples and the Roman myth of Romulus and Remus being raised by a she-wolf. However, the scientific consensus is that these similarities are likely the result of chance, accidental borrowing, or ancient cultural exchanges in the Mediterranean. Lost Roman villages. Before the 20th century, many ethnic Greeks in Anatolia did not identify as Hellenes, instead maintaining their East Roman and Byzantine heritage. They referred to themselves as Romans during World War I and the subsequent Greco-Turkish War. Military officers visiting isolated mountainous villages were reportedly told by locals that they were neither Greek nor Turkish, but simply Roman. However, in 1923, following the Treaty of Lausanne, a compulsory population exchange was forced between Greece and Turkey, which depopulated many of these culturally unique, centuries-old villages. The urban legend element usually revolves around truck drivers or travelers getting lost in heavy mist in inner Anatolia. According to these tales, the travelers stumble upon an isolated, untouched village on a hill. The villagers speak an archaic dialect, use ancient customs, and strictly identify themselves as Romans. In the more fantastical versions of the legend, these lost communities have been completely hidden from the modern Turkish state, existing as an unrecorded remnant of the Roman Empire. Black-robed dervishes. Black-robed dervishes are Sufi practitioners who begin the Sema ceremony wearing long, dark cloaks. This black robe symbolizes worldly illusions, the ego, and the grave. When the ritual begins, the dervishes shed their cloaks to reveal white robes, representing rebirth, purity, and spiritual liberation. The internet conspiracy, however, frames the black-robed dervishes as a demonic opposite of traditional peaceful dervish sects. The legend claims that these dark figures operate in a devil's triangle and bring famine, death, and destruction wherever they travel. The most extreme folklore tells of black-robed dervishes chanting demonic rituals that force entire villages to march up mountain and commit ritualistic suicide in the middle of the night. The foundation of this legend largely stems from the politicalization and persecution of Sufi orders following the fall of the Ottoman Empire. When modern Turkey was founded in 1925, President Ataturk declared Sufi practices illegal in order to secularize the country, forcing the Sema ceremonies underground. Operating in secret, naturally bred local rumors, folklore, and occult mysteries among those outside of the Islamic mystical tradition. Shamaran ship in Golden Horn. The Shamaran ship in the Golden Horn typically refers to a fascinating blend of local folklore and Ottoman history. Shamaran is a legendary mythological figure, half woman, half serpent, deeply rooted in Anatolian, Turkic, and Iranian mythology. In modern Istanbul folklore and urban legends, a mythical ship bearing her name is often associated with the waters of the Golden Horn. Urban legends and modern ghost stories in Turkish folklore often recount tales of the Shamaran ship. In these stories, it is described as a ghostly or mystical vessel quietly navigating the waters of the Golden Horn at night, symbolizing the timeless, hidden, and often magical history of the ancient city of Istanbul. Gog and Magog are Turks. The identification of Gog and Magog as Turks is a recurring theme in ancient history, medieval geography, and apocalyptic literature. Magog is listed as a descendant of Japheth. Historically, and in many Bible commentaries, these Japhethite descendants are localized to Anatolia, the Caucasus, and the Eurasian steppes. Throughout the Middle Ages, both European Christian kingdoms and Arab caliphates frequently associate Gog and Magog with formidable nomadic tribes of the East. As various Turkic and Mongolic groups, such as the Hun, Khazar Turks, and Seljuks, swept westward, they were often labeled as Gog and Magog due to their fearsome reputations and origins. In classical Islamic historiography, figures like the renowned scholar Ibn Kathir described Gog and Magog as groups of Turks. Both are traced back genealogically through Japheth, who is considered in Islamic tradition to be the father of the Turkic peoples. Once again, I'm so sorry for mispronouncing multiple Turkish words within this video. I know there's about 100 people who want my head right now, but there's nothing I can do about it. I promise my next video will be better. Until then, thank you very much for watching. I've been Craxo Spinner, and until the next story, I'm just in my room.